Hello, everyone. This is Violet Haldane, and today is Monday, August 31st. This is the Community Coalition meeting, and today our topic is the reopening of the various organizations. I'm just going to welcome our guests, and right now the names I have are Reggie Freeman, who is our fire chief. Jason Toady, I hope you're still on, maybe on the phone, who is our police chief, and Liany Arroyo, who is our director of public health for the city of Hartford. And we have Shirley Surgeon, who's the councilwoman for the city of Hartford. I'd just like to give you our guests. Are there any other guests on the phone that I should introduce that may be with the city or another organization?
Hi,
Okay.
Violet.
Yes.
This is Aimee Chambers from Development Services. I'm just here to listen, but.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. And I'm just going to give you a little bit of background about this group. We are comprised of about 13 social cultural organizations, mostly of West Indian heritage. And we came together several months ago because there were some issues that were that our community was concerned about, and we decided to work together so that we could address them and also learn from each other and support each other, especially during these times. The purpose of this meeting is a couple months ago, well, due to COVID, our West Indian community has been hard hit. We knew this was going to happen, and we had started, I think, in February with some conversations with a broader group of the community because we knew that the West Indian community would be hard hit because we are frontline essential workers, not only because of the work we do in hospitals and our restaurants, etc., but we're also a lot of in the transportation field. We do a lot of the driving for the for businesses. So we knew that as frontline workers, our community was going to be hard hit. At that time, we had a series of conversations led by the West Indian Foundation, which focused on different topics: economics, health, education, etc. And we had a series of conversations. After those conversations stopped, we realized that our clubs and our social organizations and associations also had a particular need. And this is where this community coalition, how they started. As I said, it's about 13 organizations, and we have joined with other social clubs, organizations within the city of Hartford. They have been invited to our meetings and they do attend. But this group of organizations have been hard hit by COVID. Many of them have been closed since March. The licenses for many of the clubs, such as the West Indian Social Club, Korean American, etc., they have a bar license. And as we know, bars are closed and they have not been given the okay to reopen. So because of that, expenses are still being incurred by all of these properties that pay a lot of tax to the city of Hartford, but we are not getting any income in. And we have invited you here today so that we can really understand the rules, the guidelines and the rules regarding people attending our facilities, considering we have a bar license, even if we are not serving alcohol, the bar is not open. And also to get the public safety guidelines, the health guidelines, and also at some point to discuss what are some options that we may have, because our guests, health, fire, and police, you are the ones that will be enforcing the laws and the rules. And so we would like to know what are your thoughts on how we can move forward and begin to bring some income in So I'm going to start with Liany to see if you can give us the health department guidelines regarding social setting. I know we've been on a timetable and different things have been open at different times with different rulings. So maybe you can share with us what the current guidelines are today in regards to us.
Sure. So social clubs are allowed to reopen. And as you noted, Violette, our social clubs often have several different types of licenses attached to their facilities. So you might have a food license, class 1, 2, 3, or 4. And I think most of you are 2s and 3s potentially. That just governs the type of food that you can serve and how you can cook that food. You might also have a liquor control license because you do bar areas. You might have a catering license because you also do catering and private events. So I understand that you all may have a host of different licenses. But at this point in time, the basic rules are such that if you are operating as a restaurant, which because some of you may have food licenses, class 2, 3s, or 4s, again, I think most of you are 2s and 3s, you may reopen using that license classification and use 50% of your capacity. But you must open as a dining establishment, meaning people are sitting at tables being served their food, not getting up and receiving food. So that's sort of one option that I just sort of wanted to put out there. If you're looking at just opening up your bar, that is not allowed. No alcohol can be served without the consumption of food. So again, no alcohol can be served without the consumption of food. And again, you would be subject to the 50% capacity rule, which means people are seated and they're receiving what the state has called a restaurant type experience. Lastly, if you're looking to book your facility for private events, then from the perspective of the state, there is still a cap on indoor private events at 25 individuals. So if you were to host a private event that was completely inside, you will only be able to have 25 individuals inside the facility. You cannot use the restaurant rules to open. So I just want to be clear on that because we have run into some of these issues in other parts of the state where social clubs and catering facilities thought that they would use the 50% restaurant rules to reopen. So in this case, that would not be allowed. If you're using the outside of your facility, you have a cap of 100 individuals, provided that they can fit comfortably in there with social distancing guidelines in place. So those are the basic rules. I know that you made me a host. I would like to do a share screen if I can do that. Would love to just show everyone where these rules and guidelines can be found. So let me see if this works. So they're pretty easy to find. If you go to portal.connecticut.gov/coronavirus, you will see all of the resources regarding the Connecticut response and everything that you would need to know. So if you scroll down, you'll see get the latest guidance now, and you can click on that. Sorry, my computer is a little slow because our internet's a little slow at home right now. Under here, you will see all of the sector rules. This is updated regularly. So if you see indoor private gatherings, 25 people, outdoor private gatherings, 100 people, outdoor organized gatherings, because individuals have asked about this, these are larger events that are with the municipality. So like, as they mentioned, fireworks or concerts, things that are happening in municipal parks. That has a cap of 500 people. However, in the city, we've made the decision to lower that cap because of the challenges that we have and how hard hit we've been. And so if you're looking to do some sort of event in one of our parks, Development Services will tell you that the cap is 200 people because we've lowered the caps there. You will still follow many of these same rules, 15 feet of space and things of that nature. And then you'll see sort of the other capacities that you have. If you go down this rule, you'll see everything that has to be followed. All of the rules are there. You can click and find out more information. I thought social clubs were specifically mentioned on one of these pages. I don't see it right now, but I will try and find it for you. That being said, again, if you want to open using your restaurant license, there are a series of sector rules that you have to follow, and you can click there and it'll tell you everything you need to know. You need to self-certify your business, and there's a process for doing that. It's very simple online. And then you must follow all of the rules. And so if you see here, as I mentioned, social clubs to follow all rules applicable to their operations. So if you have a restaurant or a food license, depending on how you're working or how you're operating, those are the rules that you have to follow. Those are the basics. Everything again in here is updated regularly. I sit on a committee at the state level representing municipalities, larger municipalities, urban areas, to provide feedback and guidance on what's happening here. So we do get these rules updated. They change. They can change weekly. As you notice, some of these were updated on the 14th of this month. So I would urge you all to take a look at these and to take a look at these regularly. I also do want to know, if you're looking to reopen, we are happy to set up a meeting with you, send an inspector over to your facility, walk through your facility and tell you what you need to know in order to be able to reopen and really minimize the risk of the spread of COVID. So I'll just stop there, and not sure, Viola, if you want to do questions or anything like that, but I'll stop the screen share.
I think almost all of the organizations are operating under a bar license. I do not think they are operating under any restaurant licenses, which is one of the concerns.
So if you have, if you've been serving food, you have to have a food license from the city.
Right.
So if you have a food license from the city and you're looking at being a class, really looking at 2s, 3s, and 4s, because a class 1 is very different. That's prepackaged food that you wouldn't really fall under this, because you couldn't provide a restaurant type of experience with a class 1 license. But if you are a class 2 or 3, you will have your alcohol commission license and you will have a food license, because you cannot provide alcohol without food in the state of Connecticut. Now, oftentimes different places will have very little food that they provide. We've asked our places that are bars that have functioned typically as bars that have reopened to provide more substantial food and changed their operations to mimic that more of that of a restaurant, and they've done that and they've reopened. So if you're telling me we have facilities, and some of the social clubs have facilities where they have their liquor license and they have a class 2 or a class 3 food license, we can work with you to go under the safest guidelines that are possible to allow you to reopen.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that, Liany. I'm going to go to the police and fire chiefs so they can give us some public safety guidelines. And then I will open the floor up to the members, the leaders of the organization, so they can talk to you maybe in specifics regarding some of their concerns. But I'm going to go to Mr. Thody.
Yes, how are you? Can you hear me?
Okay. So
I think that, in the interest of the folks that are probably most involved in the permitting and the inspections on this, I'm probably going to defer just quickly to Chief Freeman. I'll go last, because really Health and Human Services in the permitting side, and then Chief Freeman in the fire side on the fire marshal's office kind of run point on this, and what we really our involvement is really on the public safety side to try to enforce some of this stuff if it gets out of hand. So if it's okay with you, I'll go last, and I'll acquiesce to Chief Freeman.
that's perfectly fine. Mr. Freeman.
Good evening, ma'am, and good evening again to everyone. So per Chief Thody's last statement, the Fire Marshal's office works hand in hand with licensing and inspections. So when the state first opened up for the altered I guess you could say, attendance of our restaurants, there were plans that were submitted to licensing and inspections as well as the fire marshal's office. So both offices would go out to the said restaurant to ensure that the means of egress and ingress were intact, which in short, your travel in and out of the restaurant, there were no issues, there were no blocked exits. And then from there, the policy was to adhere to the governor's executive order in regards to max capacity. So that inspection process, that paperwork or that permitting process that has to take place in the fire marshal's office and LNI, they would go out and inspect the said occupancy. From there, my job as the emergency management director is to ensure that there is adherence to the governor's executive order. If there is not adherence to the governor's executive order, then I would sign a cease and desist order and that establishment would be shut down. We have had to do that, unfortunately, on several occasions. Now, let me also highlight that that is our obvious last course of action. As the city, the direction from the mayor, the expectations from all of our elected officials is that as the city of Hartford, we would work with all of our citizens and all of our businesses to ensure that they can be successful. And for the most part, that has happened. But have we had to take steps to shut certain establishments down, whether it be restaurants or even private residencies? Unfortunately, yes, we have, in the name of public safety and public health. But that, ma'am, is the short version of what occurs with the fire marshal's office as well as LNI.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I am going to kind of open it up for general discussion. And if any, Shirley, Miss Shirley, anything you may want to say to our group, because thank you for facilitating getting all of our invited guests here today. Really appreciate it. Anything you want to say to the
I
group?
just want to, I want to thank all the group for allowing, our invited guests to participate and educate them and what they will need to do, going forward and opening up. It's really important that all of our West Indian organizations understand how the pandemic is, how really hard hitting it is. I truly understand the financial wherewithal that everybody's going through, but just want to make sure that when everybody's opened up going forward or thinking of opening going forward, they know the rules and regulations. So therefore, we won't have any issues with the city. So I just want to thank the group for the opportunity to do so everyone will be on the same page as we go forward. And I want to thank Chief Tody, Chief Freeman, and also our Health Commissioner, Liany, to really finding the time to really do that. And this is their personal time they're giving up to do this. So I just want to thank them so very much for doing this for us.
Thank you. Okay.
I'm sorry, I was just going to ask Madam Councilwoman, personal time, what's that?
Well, it's 8 o'clock, it's dinner time and everything. So, giving up your dinner time to spend, an hour with us is really very much appreciative. We really do want to thank you very much for doing so.
Yes, ma'am. Always a pleasure.
Okay. So, thank you. So I am going to open the floor up to all of the leaders of the various organizations because you may each have unique situations. And so this is probably a time that we can ask some questions to try to help you get open.
Yeah, I thought the chief would say something after the fire marshal. Or is he not going to make a comment?
You have to unmute. Got it.
I'm on mute. Okay, I thought the police chief was going to make a comment after the fire marshal before we ask questions. Or could we just go straight into questions?
Mr. Tody?
Sure. So I also have Lieutenant Louis Ruiz, who's the Northeast District Lieutenant on, and Assistant Chief Medina. So really briefly, what Director Arroyo said and what the fire chief said are kind of lays the groundwork for the rules. How many people can be in one place, what permits there need to be in place. And then we're really kind of the last resort of enforcement. When things are not followed, you know, we have, since this pandemic started, we've taken the approach per the city council and per the mayor to educate. We have not we've tried to be very light-handed in our enforcement. We're not looking to, we know it's a difficult time. We're not looking to arrest people, but as time progresses and as things start to, people start to get back to normal, whether they're allowed to or not, we have had to come in and we have had to do some enforcement. You know, we gladly participate in things like this so that we can educate and not have to enforce. But, you know, basically our role in this is to enforce the executive orders of the governor, enforce the executive orders of the mayor during this pandemic. So we're here to answer questions. Our officers are out there on a regular basis to do just that. But in a nutshell, I think it's important probably to get to the specific question. So I'll leave it there.
Thank you. Okay, the floor is open.
Okay. Okay. My name is Earl Smith. I'm the chairperson of the West Indian Social Club. And like every other organization in this group, we are heavily impacted by COVID. I mean, take a look at it. We haven't opened, we've been closed since the second week in March. And as an organization, just like all the organizations in this forum, we rely on revenues. Our main source of revenues is our bar, which is closed. There's no money there. This year we had two major fundraisers. I mean, and between those two fundraisers, it was projected to bring in at least $100,000 in profit, not revenues. So we lost all of that. I mean, give an example for Bill. The taxes we pay to the city is about $50,000 a year. That doesn't change. Our insurance is about $30,000 a year. That doesn't change. Our mortgage is $1,700 a month. I mean, that doesn't change. And we still have, even though we're closed, we still have electricity bill, gas bill to pay. It's going to be reduced because the club is not open, but it's a significant impact on this organization. And the West Indian Social Club being the biggest in terms of the size of the building and the size of membership, we are impacted significantly. We are being very good corporate citizens by not having any functions, but we are hurting. We are hurting, and we're trying to find ways in which we can reopen the club, because we may not be here next year if this thing continues, because the city is not going to reduce the taxes on businesses. The insurance company is not going to say, don't pay the insurance and provide us with the coverage. The mortgage company is not going to say, don't pay your mortgage. We've got a relief from them, but that's only for a limited number of time. So we are heavily impacted, and we're trying to find means. I know when, what's her name, Liany did her presentation, she went through the different openings. And for example, like say the Hartford Athletics, I'm not quite sure where that fell under, where they're allowed to have like 25% of capacity. So they're allowed to do that. You know, the West Indian Social Club, we have a backyard. Right now with the current guidelines, it's only 100 people that we can accommodate. No one is going to rent facility from us for 100 people. So, so we're at a limbo. One of the questions I want to ask is that there is something in the presentation she had that mentions amphitheater. We have a stage back there. Is there a function? Could we operate as an amphitheater by having a concert with 25% capacity? I mean, that's what I'm looking at, because the inside is very limited to what we can do from the inside based on the guidelines. And I want to talk to Liany more afterwards to look into the restaurant option to see. I know, I'm not sure if we have a food service license for our kitchen. I'm not sure we have a restaurant license. We don't operate as a restaurant. Our kitchen is primarily for us to cook for our guests. It's not a restaurant that we sell food to the public. And one of the things that we're looking at right now as an organization is let's try to get a restaurant license so we can open up come wintertime. But one question to Leon is that with the Hartford's athletics, what category do they fall under to have their functions? And also, is it possible for organizations, and I think there are two of us that has a physical stage on their premises, could we do an event as an amphitheater and have like 25% of capacity or whatever the requirements are? Or is there any other ways that we could operate? Could we have a festival or a carnival, something back there where we could operate and charge a fee and stuff like that? Because we're just looking for options to generate revenues, and it seems to be very limited. And we're being good corporate citizens by not having any functions, but we're going to go under because there's no end in sight, especially with the governor not opening bars. I think that's not going to happen for a while. So that's going to be the shore. It's going to be the shore. I'm not going to say. I mean, it's going to hurt a lot of organizations. So I mean, I think this is my question.
On the amphitheater piece, I would say my initial reaction is no, because that's not how you function in the past. Amphitheaters are like Xfinity Hall. The Hartford Athletic fell under, they were classified as an essential business by the state, much like the New Britain Bees were classified as an essential business. And so they were allowed to reopen, and they were allowed to use their facilities at 25% capacity. The Yard Goats chose not to reopen, but that was because their entire league chose not to have games. So the 25% capacity comes from the state for those types of sporting events, similar to the Speedway, I think in Northwest Connecticut, that has NASCAR races. So they're falling under a completely different, not under some of those things that you see there. There are some sort of like exceptions, if you want to call them that are coming from the state that we don't necessarily have. We have control over our facility, and we've worked with them about what they need to do at Dillon Stadium in order to reopen safely. But they were classified as an essential business by the state. So we worked with them to allow Dillon Stadium to reopen. And Aimee, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but that was my understanding of the entire thing when we worked with them to do that. I think in terms of, you see on there when they talked about festivals, that came in later. If you're looking to host something, the idea would be, I don't know if your backyard is big enough to host a festival, let's say.
It's big.
Okay, so we would have to see what that looks like and what you're trying to do. And if you look at the guidance, it talks about 25% of last year's attendance. So you would have to be able to peg that to a number for us to determine what 25% is. Again, I'm not saying it is off the table, out of the question, Earl. I think it just needs a further conversation. And if there's another way of you all coming together and looking at doing something, again, on a smaller scale, that's something that we can have a conversation about. I do want to be upfront that, our goal right now, and don't want to diminish any of the financial hurt that any of you are going through, because this is why we've been working with some of our bars that have a Class 2 license in order to allow them to reopen using the restaurant rules and working with them. And when you say a restaurant license, if your kitchen is licensed as a Class 1, as a Class 2, 3, or 4, we can work with you. So if you have a kitchen and you're serving food out of it, depending on what you're doing there, you likely have a food license. So let's figure out what your food license is, and let's figure out what we can do there and figure out what the art of the possible is. If you have a backyard, as Chief Freeman mentioned, and Aimee can discuss as well, there's a permitting process to do like a patio. That's another option that you can potentially look at as well. So there, I think, are opportunities to figure some things out with you to discuss, and we're happy to do that. And we're happy to do that with development services. If you want to host some sort of special event, we've been talking with development services about what those things would look like and how we could do them in a way that mitigates the risk. Because right now, as I spoke with Councilwoman Surgeon earlier, our goal is to get our children into school and keep them in there for as long as possible before things are shut down again, or if they get shut down again. That's right now is our #1 goal. And so any events that we're approving, we've had some stricter guidelines than the state has in order to help us do that.
Yeah, but from the perspective what you mentioned that, for example, the amphitheater option is something that we're looking at, and your response says that since we haven't operated as an amphitheater in the past, I mean, if that's, I mean, I mean, the state and the city really has to think outside the box. If we have the facility to operate as an amphitheater and bring a concert with 25% capacity with social distancing, and if the perspective is going to be like, you know, that before, so therefore that may not be a consideration. And then that, I think that's, you know, so perspectives has to change if the goal is to assist business in terms of really assisting business and not just saying you're assisting business. You know, and I'm just talking from a state perspective or a citizen perspective. I'm not sure who made that particular decision.
That was
but
the state.
The state would, right?
That was the state.
So one of the things I would ask you is if you could give us a contact of where directly would we go? Is there a person, is there an office to explore that option with them?
So anything like that, you could explore with us because they're going to defer to us. So if you want to have that conversation, let's get the right people in the room. It would start with development services and they would bring me in. Let's have the conversation and let's figure out if it's workable. And if it is, we'll work with you. But like I said, initial reaction was probably not, you haven't worked that way. But to your point, if we can be creative, let's be creative as long as it remains, things can be safely done.
Liany, this is Amy. If I could chime in really quickly, there were a couple small changes that were made to the zoning regulations around temporary uses.
Okay.
One of them being like drive-in movie theaters. If someone wanted to host something like that, that is something that can maintain social distancing that may be a source of revenue for spaces like that. So I definitely think, to your point, there are some ways in which we can try to accommodate some creative uses. And I just wanted to just to circle back to your point about patios. We had a couple webinars earlier in the summer when we did when the governor did release the language around outdoor permits, where like bars and restaurants basically filed temporary permits to set up outdoor patios, like Liany mentioned. The Department of Consumer Protection, when you register for those patios, automatically extends your liquor license to that outdoor space. You're able to serve liquor provided that you're serving food and provided that your guests are seated at tables. So basically the goal is to make sure that people aren't kind of cramming in like it's a club, but if you're able to set up a space where people are seated at tables, then we can work with you to get that permit. And the turnaround for that in our office in development services is very short. It's usually within the week.
Okay, thank you. I got a question one more question for the police chief. I've seen a lot of stuff going on in and around the city in terms of huge functions on Facebook that the police are there, the functions are going on. I don't see the fire marshal going there with a cease and desist order because the functions are going on. And it's not like these functions are being held in some kind of secluded area. And from my perspective, nothing's been done. And the police are aware of it. So I'm kind of concerned with the issue being public safety and the spread of the virus, and these events are going on. And the police are standing on the perimeter doing anything. Can you comment on the approach that you're taking and why you're taking that approach?
So are you talking about some kind of like sanctioned?
No, unsanctioned. I'm sure you've seen them on that's happening in the north end and the south end. Parties, police officers are there in it.
So,
and, you know,
so I can speak to that. So the parties have been a real problem. Not only the pop-up parties at individual addresses, but also the street racers that have come and taken over parts of the city, Weathersfield Avenue, the South Meadows. We've engaged with several outside entities to help us control that. When you see police officers on the perimeter, it's because you're talking about, you know, sometimes upwards of 500, 1,000, 1,500 party goers. As police have tried to break these parties up, we've had officers shot fireworks at, hurt very badly. So we have to take an approach that's measured, where we're controlling these parties to the best of our ability without putting, you know, the officers at risk. we've taken in the last couple of weeks, with the help of Director Arroyo, Fire Chief Freeman, and many others within the city, spearheaded by the COO, Thea Montanez, we have started to address these parties at the property owner level. Chief Freeman can probably speak to it a little more, and so can Director Arroyo, but when he talks about cease and desist orders and letters that we've sent out to actual property owners and party organizers, as I said, we've tried to take a measured approach to this, but we are now going to be pursuing criminal charges against the organizers to try to prevent them from happening in the first place. This outreach recently has been effective. In the last couple weekends, we've been pretty effective in slowing these parties down. This isn't a Hartford-centric problem. This is happening across the state and across the country. With things being closed down for public safety due to COVID, people are finding other unsafe avenues to get together and drink and party. And it is unsafe from the perspective of COVID and many other things. It's unlicensed food, it's unlicensed liquor. People are getting heavily intoxicated. It's causing car accidents. It's causing violence that we don't need in the city. So we've been taking a very proactive approach. But when you see a large-scale party like that, 500 or 1,000 people, and you see 2 or 3 or 4 police officers around the perimeter, short of finding the organizers, and sometimes we can find a DJ or an organizer to help us disperse it. It's very difficult. But we have taken a shift, and again, I'll let Chief Freeman speak to it if he'd like, but we have taken a shift to talk about property owners and what we can leverage against property owners. Right now, that's been successful, holding them accountable for not just the owner of the property, but the organizer of the event. We've gone onto Facebook and social media to find who's organizing these events, get a hold of them ahead of time. For example, this last weekend, we had a takeover downtown event that was publicized through our C4, through our intelligence division. We were able to find the organizer, and we were able to get that event canceled. But again, as these, this is 2020. It's a strange year. We've dealt with fireworks in March instead of July 4th. We've dealt with all kinds of issues associated, I think, in one way or another with this pandemic that we haven't seen before. So we are doing our best. It's not any kind of tacit approval. We don't allow it to go on. We would prefer it doesn't. We have community members that live on those streets that would obviously prefer that it doesn't happen, and they call us on a regular basis, but we're doing our best, but it's a troublesome thing to deal with.
Okay.
As well, Sewell, President of the Jamaica Progressive League. I have a couple of questions, and I also like to piggyback on what was just discussed. 1118 Albany Avenue, that's our location. For the past couple of months, behind 1115 and 1123 Albany Avenue, there have been some huge parties. Last week, Friday, I was very impressed, and I have to commend the police department because one was supposed to be held on Friday night and they broke it up. However, Saturday night, they had like 2,000 people at the same location. Last night, there was another party at the same location. Now, I have been threatened. Last Saturday night, I called the police department, 911, because we had a meeting in our facility, members, and they came in and they blocked our cars in. Now, I'm getting death threats because of those people having a party over there. Every Friday evening, I'm down here and I tell them they can't park in our spot because there's an hairdresser in place in our place. And all I'm being told is that they're going to shoot me. I've had maybe 10 death threats within the past couple of months. And it's getting frustrating because they just feel like they can do anything. There's a senior center behind us. Last Saturday night, there was about 200 people around there. They parked their cars and then they go in there, they were smoking, they were defecating on the floor, they were doing all sorts of things. And I know it's difficult for the police department to deal with this, but it's becoming a nuisance right now. And I appreciate the fact that something is being done about it, but Friday they canceled one, Saturday and Sunday they had it at the same, and it's becoming a regular party spot. I know the issue was addressed, but I just had to put my 2 cents in. Now, we have a serve safe certificate in our premises. We do not have a food permit, a food license. I just heard Aimee spoke about, I think we could apply for one. I would like to do something outside on the grill and maybe some fish fry if we can get a food angler's permit. And then we have a patio outside, and we are planning to get a tent so we could put tables out there. Am I to understand that if we're going to comply by the rules governing the safe distancing, we could apply for that permit?
So there would be two things that you have to do. One is if you want to get your facility licensed with a food license, we would work with you. That might be a little more of a complicated process. If you're wanting to do a temporary event, that may be a bit of an easier process depending on your facility. So I think your best bet, Mr. Sewell, is to work with my team to determine what's the best use of your facility. That would be fastest. And then if we want to work towards making your facility have a food license, we can do that at the same time. But maybe the thing is to look at doing some temporary food events where you can bring your members in and sell food and do that kind of activity. That may require that. So that would be a temporary food license from us. And depending on your facility, it sounds like development services would be involved in case there's any sort of other permitting pieces that have to happen through L&I.
That's exactly what we're looking at, not a permit, a temporary fix, because next year will be at what do they call this, a tavern or cafe, so that's going to change our license. But for this year, just to make some funds to pay, as we still have all the bills coming in and are unable to pay them.
So
And
let's work
you can only
together.
borrow so much money and you have to pay it back. So
Not a problem. Let's work and figure out, and we can work with you to do some temporary food events that will allow you to use your facility.
can we contact, you're going to give the, I'm sure we'll get the information from
If
you.
you can see the chat, I'll put it there. Violette also knows how to reach me.
Yes, okay.
But I'll put my email in the chat. You can email me and I will make sure that we get you someone to work with you.
Okay, thank you.
I did just put it in the chat. It's there. But if you don't see it, Violette can send my information, send my city phone number, the office line, and my email.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I have a question for Ms. Chambers. I know you're not here in an official capacity, but my question is, what are other organizations in the same or similar situation doing? What are some of the things they are doing?
Do you mean with regard to outdoor dining, or with regard to
finding a way to bring in revenue?
Well, we've had, so for entities that don't have food licenses, we've had them partner with food trucks, for example. There are a couple of breweries in the Parkville area that partnered with a food truck so that they could be open. So they're open during hours where a food truck is present and the food truck's selling food, and then people who are on site are able to purchase from the bar and purchase food from the food truck, since they're entities that don't necessarily have a kitchen or food license themselves.
I wanted to chime in, Aimee, on that. They are being served. So just to be clear, they are being served at their table.
Yes, they're being served, and the patrons are sitting at the table.
Okay.
We've had some, let's see. We've had some entities that had smaller outdoor patios or no outdoor patio, apply to create a space outside. So it doesn't necessarily have to be, right in the front of the business. It doesn't even necessarily have to be, on the same lot. If there's a lot next door that you can obtain permission from the owner to use, you can use that. There's a lot that's been waived with regard to zoning requirements so that we can accommodate larger outdoor dining spaces. In addition, we've had a few entities come to us to request to do kind of some smaller, I guess, outdoor events with the phase 2 reopening. You know, that's where the governor was able to allow people to congregate in smaller groups. So those are entities that are not necessarily serving food, maybe like, I don't know, an exercise, a gym or yoga studio or something that wants to use city property to have outdoor space because they don't have outdoor space at their business, wherever their business is located. So we've had those types of requests. Like I mentioned previously, we've modified the zoning regulations to accommodate some additional sorts of temporary uses. The one that comes to mind most readily is that drive-in theater, because it's kind of like an easy way to have folks be able to congregate, but they're still staying in a socially distanced space. They're within their cars, and it's a way to drive revenue to spaces. But I think if, you know, if folks have other sorts of creative ideas where they can really prioritize how we maintain that social distancing, but are able to, you know, figure out a way to drive revenue to their space, we're definitely willing to work with you.
Okay. Go ahead, Mr.
Good
Ellis.
evening. This is John Ellis, and I am the Grand Master at the Independent United Order of Mechanics right across from the West Indian Club. And I also have the same problems as the Caribbean American Society of Hartford, Progressive League, West Indian Club. However, our situation might be slightly different in that we don't have a kitchen. We tried to apply for a kitchen, and of course we were turned down by the fire marshal. Now we're surrounded by restaurants to our left, to our right around us, and it would not even be feasible for us to consider setting up a restaurant with so much competition around us. I guess my question would be, how would we be able to do anything from a food standpoint since we don't have a kitchen? We've been turned down from trying to set up a kitchen, the restaurants all around us, and as the others mentioned, I see facilities right next door to me having large crowds every weekend night. In addition to that, we're just open pretty much on weekends on, you know, so I'm trying to find out how would I be able to get something going from that standpoint. And since I'm on that topic, I might as well add that right on Main Street between, in that very area, I see there's a whole lot of speeding going on by vehicles all hours of the day and night. And hopefully the police department can look into that as well, since we're on the top of the community-based organizations in the immediate area. So is there any way that I could work with the city of Hartford and try to establish something? Since, like I said, we're only open on weekends, how would we be able to do anything basically from a food standpoint to assist in getting us open back up to make some sort of revenue?
I think what Aimee said could potentially be an option, which is partnering with a food truck. Oftentimes when you partner with a food truck, there's certain things that happen. You can set up something where you get a cut of their profits. If you do have a liquor license, then you can serve alcohol because you have a food truck on premise to host smaller events. You can use your parking lot if you want to as a place for people to sit down. So you can do these sort of temporary food events that can be helpful to you. So I think that's probably the easiest thing, is work with us to get a temporary food license, work with Aimee to set up sort of a patio situation. And then I think the easiest thing would be bringing a food truck on, since you don't have a kitchen.
But here's my question.
Can I follow up with a question? With that temporary license, would you have to apply every weekend, or would it cover, let's say, from now till the end of summer? Well, summer is almost over, till the end of the year.
So we can talk about that.
Apply for a temporary license.
So we can talk about that. Sometimes there's seasonal licenses and I believe temporary licenses. That's not my area of specialty, though I oversee it. That's not my area of specialty, so I would have to look into what would be the best fit for you, but we can talk about that.
Can I ask?
You're on mute, Shirley.
Thank you. Thanks. So the statement was there are restaurants which is on both sides of the lodge. Could they partnership with one of the restaurants to serve food to their guests? Could that's something like that work, Aimee?
Absolutely. So we would just want to know what you're doing to make sure that all safety precautions are followed. Make sure that it doesn't fall under a catering type situation. Right. But that's another thing that we can talk about, because there's catering licenses and then there's food establishment licenses. And so many of our food establishment places also have catering licenses. So we can work together and we can figure that out. But you can absolutely partner with those next to you. And if you choose not to, you could bring a food truck on site.
Okay.
Thank you.
And Mr. Ellis, I'm not sure why the fire marshal denied your request for a kitchen. The only thing I can suspect is that there may not be a commercial range, or hasn't been tested recently. I can certainly check with the fire marshal tomorrow and get that answer, but just knowing what I know about the rules and regulations that they reference, Chief Sharif or someone on his team probably took note of the lack of commercial appliances and/or fire suppression system. But I'll check on that for you tomorrow.
Thank you.
And we would also work with you, because the inspection of the kitchen falls under, not from the fire side, but from the food safety side, falls under my department. So that's something, if the fire marshal clears you, then we can come in again and work with you to set that up and get you some sort of license for you to operate.
Very good. Much appreciated. Thanks a lot.
And Ms. Violet, I just want to circle back briefly, because Mr. Ellis, Mr. Earl, and also Mr. Sewell, they both mentioned, why is it that we have these large gatherings and, they did not receive a cease and desist? Going back to my original statement, it's the city's position that we try to give everyone every opportunity to do the right thing. And the information that I receive as the emergency management director typically either comes from one of two sources: citizens filing complaints or the police department. And what happens when we receive those complaints is that, depending on the type of establishment, whether it's a private residence or commercial property, they receive a letter. They receive a warning letter. And that warning letter is very pointed. It's very direct. That letter is also followed by a phone call from me. I've also sent text messages. I've also sent emails. And that's been done dozens of times. So if something is brought to our attention in regards to large gatherings that are happening and they seem to be frequent or coordinated, one thing I can promise you is that I personally follow up. It's a collaborative team effort, but every single instance that's been brought to our attention has been followed up on by the city. And that, before someone gets that cease and desist letter, Mr. Earl, what happens is that they are given warnings. And if they still don't comply in the name of trying to protect public health and public safety, then we take more serious action. I went as far, and I'm not proud of it, but I had to go as far as to even do an order to vacate a multifamily home because they continued to host parties at their property. Made me sick to my stomach. I never thought in a million years as a fire chief I would have to do something like that. But my wife and my two daughters live in this city. I've lost people that I've had the utmost respect for because of this virus here in this city. And we give everyone every opportunity to do the right thing. And at the end of the day, when push comes to shove, if we have to take action and do our job, that's exactly what we will do. But we try to give everyone every opportunity to do the right thing before we write a cease and desist letter and close down an establishment, or we have to write an order to vacate. Absolutely last thing that we do, or the last thing that we want to do as a city.
I understand. Thank you. It's 1 minute to 9, and I want to be respectful of everyone's time, but also want to make sure that the pressing questions were answered. Are there any additional questions that we have for our guests?
Yeah. I have one person question. Liany had mentioned about the option of using a food truck, which I think is a very creative idea. So my question is that if there's a food truck where the food truck, I think, if she can correct me, with a food truck on the premises that's licensed, then we're able to serve liquor. Is that
Yes,
correct?
sir. Yes,
Okay.
sir.
All right.
Just one caveat on that. It has to be served. People can't go up to the bar and get a drink and then go to their seat.
Okay.
Someone has to take their order, go to the bar, pick it up, and take it to the table.
Understood. What about the food? They can go up to the food truck to purchase their food, I would assume, right?
Yeah, so I've seen different things in terms of the food truck. I've seen people order and then they go sit at their table, they order their drinks. I've also heard in other municipalities, and Aimee, I'm not sure what our breweries here are doing, but in other municipalities, the breweries have used their servers there to place the orders at the food truck and bring the food. So there's different combinations. The goal is that there's not people congregating at the food truck, so that would have to be managed, and that people are seated when they're eating, and that they're not going to the bar to pick up drinks. So if you manage that process and we can work with you and think through that and help you think through that, then that is a possibility.
So the last question is that if we have the food truck, we adhere to the guidance where we have someone serving the alcohol and stuff like that. So do we have to get a special permit for that, or would you just have that function with outside 100 or less people, or do we have to go to get a special permit to let the city know there's going to be a food truck on the premises?
Yeah, I'll let Aimee answer that one. I'm not sure.
Well, if you're going to be using outdoor seating area, that I just put a link in the chat box for our outdoor patio application. It's a special application specifically for this period of time where we're under the COVID executive orders. And basically you fill that out and just kind of, what we're looking to find out is how that space is going to be laid out and how much space you're using. We've had some entities that have used, their entire parking lot or a portion of their parking lot, or some folks who are proposing to use the sidewalk in front of their businesses. So we just want to get a good idea of what that space is going to look like. And therefore, you would put on that application that you're going to be using a food truck. And that's how we would know and have a good idea of what hours that food truck will be there, because the food truck does have to be on premises for you to be serving alcohol.
So how long does the process take? So since we have to apply for that, how long does the process take to be approved?
We are basically making those approvals within like 1 week turnaround. We're doing it very quickly on purpose. But it's also been set up by the governor's office that if we don't make that approval within a 10-day period, there's an automatic approval that happens for the restaurant. If we're missing some documentation or something like that, and someone from the team reaches out and says, hey, I need this, then it may take a little bit longer, but provided we have everything that we need, we've been getting back to people well in advance of that 10-day period. And when you click on that link or go to that link on the Hartford website, on the right-hand side of the screen, there are some documents that you can download that give you some more information about exactly what we're looking for and answers any questions that you may have, with regard to the process itself.
And I would just add that permitting process, though it goes through L&I, through Development Services, it is a collaboration between the Development Services team, the fire marshal, and the food service. And so we have all been working together to try and do that site visit together to address things to the extent possible. It doesn't always happen that way, but I've seen stuff come in and we've done it in 5 days or less a lot of the times.
So it's not just Development Service, it goes through your office and the fire marshal.
My team comes out to inspect for the COVID stuff, making sure you're 6 feet away, the tables are 6 feet away, that kind of stuff. And then fire marshal does their job, as Chief Freeman mentioned earlier, to make sure that the means of egress and all of that is taken care of. And then Aimee's team goes in to make sure that the space is appropriate for that use. but there's lots of flexibility there. And we've seen lots of folks take over even parking spaces in front of their facility, parking lots and things of that nature. But it is a very quick process. This application that Aimee created has helped us streamline the process tremendously, and all of the teams are working together. So we all have worked together very closely to make sure that we do this as quickly as possible.
Okay, thank you.
Just one question. I just wanted to find out from Chief Tody or Chief Freeman, is there a number someone can call if they are seeing or observing these large illegal get-together, or is it just calling 911? How would someone call and report that information or share that information?
So it would either be, we get them through 911, we get them through the police department's non-emergency number, 860-757-4000. And we also get them through neighborhood relationships with the community service officers. A lot of times they'll call their community service officer directly, which is a good way, especially if they hear about it ahead of time. A lot of times folks in the neighborhood may see people preparing for one of these parties, or may hear that one of these parties are going to happen. I would encourage them to give us a call ahead of time. If they don't know who their CSO is, it's on the website. They can also call the non-emergency number and just let us know. We'll get someone. Lieutenant Ruiz is on the line right now on the phone call here, or Zoom meeting, whatever these are. You know, he's the district commander, so he'll get on top of them. If we know about them ahead of time and we can get a hold of the property owner or the person that's hosting or promoting these parties ahead of time, like we did on Friday on Albany Avenue, we can prevent it from getting out of control. Once it gets too big, it's very difficult for us to break it down. So the sooner you can get in touch with us, I can work with Director Arroyo and the fire chief, Chief Freeman, and we can usually get ahead of it. So we would encourage you to call any number that you'd like to call to get a hold of us ahead of time. That'd be great. And
Chief Tody, I know there's 2 walk beats in Albany Avenue. Is it possible they could stop by and visit Mr. Sewell at the Progressive League?
Yes.
Mr.
Absolutely.
Sewell, would that be okay with you?
You're on mute, Mr. Sewell.
He's on mute.
Yeah.
Here is a
Okay.
walk beat in Albany Avenue.
That would be great. As I said, I'm tired of the death threats. I took a couple of license plates the other day, and I'm not afraid of dying. I think I've lived long enough, so I'm not going to let them abuse my rights either. So I am going to keep telling them they can't park here, but I also want to know that if I need the police department to come, they will come.
Well, we'd like to see you stick around a little longer. So I'll have Lieutenant Ruiz make sure that he comes out and touches base with you, and we'll do what we can to keep that under control. Really, that Albany Avenue location just popped up on our radar recently, and what we find is that we're moving these parties around. When we close one address down, it's like that game whack-a-mole. You know, you hit one, it drops, another one pops up somewhere else. So I promise we'll work with you to get that under control over there. Lieutenant Ruiz will come over and see.
I have them. They can give you my number, and they can contact me, and then I'll meet them down here if I'm not here.
Great.
So Lieutenant Ruiz right here. What time would be a good time tomorrow in the afternoon to meet?
Tomorrow, anytime tomorrow, you can. What time is good for you? I'm retired, so.
My walk beat guys come in around 4 o'clock. I can come a little bit early, or we can meet anytime after 4 o'clock.
No, 4 would be fine.
Okay, let's make it 4:30 of us because they get here exactly 4 o'clock. So by the time they get dressed, put the uniforms on.
That's fine.
Okay, what is your address here, Mr. Sewell?
1118 Albany Avenue.
Okay, we'll be here tomorrow at 4:30. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
Thanks, Lieutenant.
And Mr. Sewell, I just want to also officially apologize for you having experienced what you've experienced. That's not anything that anyone should have to go through. But as a city, we are committed to ensuring that we do any and everything we can to help you. And as you can see, the police chief is all over it. But I just wanted to officially apologize for you having that experience.
Thank you. Thanks.
And I would like to thank everyone for attending this evening. I think we have some good information. I think some of the organizations might have some potential solutions. At least they know who to get in touch with and what some of the next steps are. Invited guests, I really appreciate you. I know many of you have kids that you could be spending this time with or putting to bed at this time, so I appreciate it. Recording will be sent out, and we will try to send out some notes, at least with the phone numbers and emails. And again, thank you, everyone. We really appreciate it. No meeting next week to the regular group. We'll see you on the on the 14th. Thank you.
so very much. Thank
Good
you,
evening.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Much appreciated.
Thank you very much.